Hello, this is Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. Today we are continuing our devotional on conflict resolution, and we are going to look at conflicts between believers. So this is a very straightforward passage. Really won't be a very long devotional because there's explicit directions about what to do, except for it leaves us somewhat out of the cliffhangers. So let's get straight into the passage. It's Matthew 18:15 through 17. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, and it says, the title is Correcting Another Brother. So really having to do with the issue between you and another believer, So what I want to reiterate, though, that because today's Wednesday, so that means Monday and Tuesday, I already did devotionals on conflict resolution having to do with getting yourself right with God and then getting yourself right with yourself, okay? And both of those are really important as we get into this third area, because if we can get those two resolved, it may be that there isn't really another conflict between a believer. But if, in fact, there's something that's actual conflict that persists beyond you knowing that you're doing things right by God's standards, and you know that you're being straightforward and honest about what's really troubling you, then we move on to this area. And the 15th verse says, if another believer sins against you, go privately and point out the offense. Okay, so that's step number one. Go to them privately and tell them what it is that they've done wrong to you. Interestingly enough, people are never really this direct. I get people all the time. They're like, well, they did that and they know what they did wrong. It's like, okay, if you didn't go to them and tell them what they did wrong, they don't know what they did wrong. You need to not assume that you know that they know whatever it is that went wrong, because if you assume that, for one, you're just trying to act like you read their mind or their understanding. You don't know what they know until you say it out of your mouth. So go to them and tell them their offense, what the issue is. But also remember that you're going to go to them privately, not in the middle of 10 people and say, this is what you did. I get that a lot when I'm doing counseling, particularly couples counseling. I get couples who are, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're about to say. I know. It's like, okay, let's not go there. That's abnormal, and it's not necessary. And so the same way is to say, you know what you did to me. No, you don't know what they know. You need to say what it is that the issue is. Okay, so we do that in private. So then there's a period. The next sentence says, if the other person listens and confesses it, you have won the person back. Okay, so if they say, oh, you know what? You're right. I did that. I'm sorry about that. Then it's over. Conversation over, conflict resolved. Really, it's done. Okay, so being direct honestly answers a lot of the issues. Just say what it is that you have a problem with. Say what it is that you feel has hurt you, and let the person have the opportunity to respond to it. Okay, so that's ideal. The person says, I know what I did. I'm so sorry for doing it. And they move on. Next, verse 16, but if you're unsuccessful, take one or two others with you and go back again. So now you're going to bring somebody back to help you to resolve the conflict, okay? So that everything you say may be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Now this person is here to help you resolve the conflict, but also to be a witness to what's really going on. So you bring Sister Sally or whoever you want to bring with you, and you two come together and say, now, remember we talked about this and you really did hurt me, or you did this, or something was wrong, and now Sally's here to help us resolve the issue. Okay, not to attack this individual, and we want to be mindful of that, because I've seen that a lot in churches. They're ganging up on people, and now you're going to berate this person. No, just 2 people come and say, listen, this is the issue. It doesn't seem to be working. What can we do to resolve it, and so on and so forth. And that person's there as a witness or as a mediator to try to get the thing to work out. Now, if that 2 or 3 witnesses doesn't work, verse 17 says, if the person still refuses to listen, take your case to the church. Okay, so whatever the issue is, you're going to go to the church and have them try to mediate it. Okay, try to work it out. Okay, so now that the church is acting as the mediator to the situation, telling, okay, what needs to happen now because they still haven't resolved this. Then, if he or she won't accept the church's decision, okay, so now they won't even listen to the church, then treat that person as a pagan or a corrupt tax collector. Okay. What does that mean? Because we don't know who a pagan would be or a corrupt tax collector. Some translations say as an unbeliever. But what does that mean? And this is the cliffhanger for this passage. At that time, in the context that we're talking about from Matthew, treat them like an unbeliever would be like have nothing to do with them. Treat them like a tax collector or pagan would mean have nothing to do with them. However, there's some more passages that we need to read when we talk about people who are not in the same faith as us, who are not a common believer with us, that actually says that treatment, the treatment that has to do with the person who's a non-believer, shouldn't necessarily be as abrupt as maybe this implies. And I've had people who like, I did everything the Bible said to do in Matthew. I did this, I did, and they followed all these steps, right? And then they're like, and so now I don't have anything to do with them. I'm completely cutting them off. I have nothing. I don't want to ever talk to them. And they're just really like, I'm done. And it's a lot of hatred and frustration and rage. And I would say that that's not acceptable. Why? Because it doesn't match the character of God, and God is never telling us in our character it's okay for us to be basically dismissive in a way that is ungodly towards another person. Period. That's not what he's saying. So when it says this, we'll have to go into deeper passage, which means we have another study coming up, because it talks about how then do we resolve conflicts with unbelievers, because that's something that clearly needs to be addressed. However, this passage alone doesn't necessarily give us the example clearly of what to do. And we have a lot of cultural context here too that we want to be mindful of. And so what I just want to encourage you to do is this: keep it simple. We talked about this. Listen, if this, I don't know what kind of issue could be this big where you have to go to the person, add another person, go to the church. That's a big issue, okay? That's something that really clearly is a big deal. Maybe like a land dispute, or maybe you and somebody, had a deal or a business deal that went wrong and it got to this type of level, okay? That could be something that could be unresolved in this type of manner. But when we're talking about minor things, really, most often, it's just a matter of you going to God, you going and dealing with yourself, what's at the heart of this conflict. And then when you get to the person, you might just choose to forgive them. You might just do that. I mean, in my mind, I can't think of a dispute that would be worth all of this type of litigation and mediation and whatnot if I have already gone to God and I've already examined my own motives and I've kind of weighed it all the way out. By the time I get to this type of conflict where I have to involve all these different levels of people, it seems that it's a very complex situation. However, there is always the opportunity to say, I forgive you. I just forgive you. Whatever you did to me, it was wrong. It hurt me. I'm not going to say you didn't hurt me, but I'm just going to forgive you. And that's just me personally. But again, the passage tells us how to deal with it. So I would say apply the passage by all means. If you don't feel like it's something that you're able to just dismiss or look over, or something that you shouldn't dismiss and look over, because sometimes you're enabling bad behavior if you overlook things that a person really does need to be accountable for. But at what level of accountability will you begin to turn the other cheek? That's the question that I think you want to be mindful of. However, you have the instructions, and I encourage you to read Matthew, the 18th chapter, 15th through the 17th verse. And then if you would hold on till tomorrow, we're going to discuss the next level of conflict, which has to do with someone who is not of the same faith as you, not a believer like you, and how do you resolve conflict with them, because there is actually instruction there too. So I hope you've enjoyed this series so far. I really, really, really want to encourage you that you wouldn't just look at this devotional, that you would go back and look at the beginning of conflict resolution, which has to do with you and God, and then again, you and yourself, me, myself, and I, or you, yourself, and you. So if you would look at that one and those two in conjunction with this one, I think you'll find a breadth of knowledge and information and insight for how to really have integrity when things are not going so well. And then tomorrow, we have a little bonus for you, how to deal with people who aren't of the same faith. I think I've already said that. So I want to tell you that I'm praying for you, and I hope that you're praying for Launching Legacies. We need your prayers. We're glad to have your prayers, and we'll bless you, and we hope that you're blessing us in those prayers at the same time. We'll see you tomorrow with another Raw Devotional. Until then, be best. Be blessed.